Here we go. You're Phoenix, I'm Will, and we're here to bring on the questions. So, Ms. Phoenix, what question are we bringing in this episode?
Another one of our fans Molly asked, what was the Tartarian Empire?
This is the next one after our conspiracy theory episode. This is an actual conspiracy theory that we're going to tackle here.
Mm-hmm.
First, we're going to address the fact that both of us have some sniffles.
And that'll be clearing my throat probably.
I'm taking drinks. We've got tissues. They're called tissues, not Kleenex.
Kleenex is a brand name.
Yep, that's a thing people do. We might get into that on like a shorty episode sometime. How people refer to the brand as the product, the thing.
Like Frisbee.
It's a brand.
Is a brand. Post-it is a brand.
Yes.
But Sticky Note is the generic name.
And tissues are the thing.
The generic name.
Yep.
But
that's fun times for a different episode.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into this one, the Tartarian Empire.
Which might take a while.
Might take a little bit of time. But that's alright. We'll do that.
Looking at the amount of notes we have, it might take a little.
Hopefully my phone, our recording device, can handle it. Alright, we better get started.
You remembered the ending this time. Because usually I have to add it.
That's alright. Maybe I should let you add it. I usually focus on getting the notes in there. Alright. The proliferation of pseudo-historical conspiracy theories has become a notable phenomenon in the contemporary digital landscape. Among these theories, the narrative of the Tartarian Empire stands out due to its ambitious scope and the fervor of its adherents. This theory posits the existence of a vast, globally influential, and technologically advanced civilization known as Tartaria, which proponents claim has been systematically erased from historical records.
The narrative, as presented by Tartarian advocates, describes an empire of immense scale and sophistication. This empire, often referred to as a massive advanced regime, is believed to have once held sway over a significant portion of the Asian continent, with some proponents extending its reach to encompass a global presence that included Africa, North and South America, Australia, and New Zealand. The name Tartarian Empire is derived from the historical term Tartary, a geographical designation used by Europeans for a vast area spanning Central Asia and Siberia.
Right. Which, that is a lot of land for one empire to have some sort of control or sway over. It's that right there, in my mind, is like a red flag in its possibility of it actually being a thing, because there's so much territory on this planet that a single empire entity, I mean, I guess Rome did it, the Romans, they took a bunch of land between Asia and Europe, but it didn't last long. So that alone, the vastness of it, leads me to believe that probably not a thing. But we'll get into all of that kind of stuff.
I think I had better, pronunciation now that I'm sick.
Because you're slowing down. You're focusing.
Oh. Well, maybe.
You can't breathe out of your nose.
I can a little.
A little.
I think I just blew it.
It'll be a fun topic to get into? Quackery. It's medical stuff. just goofy things in history that people have tried for medical things. Some things are actually still in different countries practiced. Flocculation, crazy. So they take dead skin particles. I think this is it. I think this is flocculation. They'll take dead skin particles of people who have been affected by smallpox or some sort of pox. Take dead skin samples and just blow it in somebody's face so that it it vaccinates them essentially. Yep, quackery, dude. We'll get into it.
It kind of reminds me how people would take like snake venom to cure snake venom.
Right. It seems backwards, but a person we should get into is Rasputin. Dude.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
All right, we got to keep going. We got a lot of notes.
Yeah.
Advocates of the theory contend that this empire was a distinct entity, potentially predating the Mongol Empire, despite the historical term Tartary frequently appearing in contexts related to Mongol expansion and influence in European historical writings. This interpretation allows proponents to selectively use historical maps labeled Tartary as evidence for their lost empire. However, this approach often overlooks the actual historical context of these maps and the limited, often inaccurate, geographical understanding of the regions they depicted by European cartographers. The term Tartary served as a broad, often ill-defined label for territories beyond European understanding. So they're like, so over there, we don't really know what's going on over there, so Tartary. That's just on the map. It's just like this big, like, don't go over there, Tartary. Mongol Empire, there's stuff going on over there that we're not so sure of. So just, we're not going to explore it right now. We'll just call it Tartary. Old maps has it. Go ahead.
A cornerstone of the Tartarian Empire narrative is the claim of advanced, often unspecified, technology possessed by this lost civilization. Foremost among these claims is the assertion of unlimited wireless energy, frequently portrayed as a central technological achievement of the Tartarians. This concept is sometimes linked to the work of Nikola Tesla or even more
esoteric,
supposedly suppressed technologies.
This is interesting. I'm pretty sure that's referring to radiant energy. In simple terms, it's energy that travels in waves like light or heat and can travel through space. It's a form of electromagnetic radiation which doesn't require a medium to travel. Examples include sunlight, heat from a fire, or energy from a microwave. We can harness radiant energy from the sun in the form of solar panels. In my personal research, I understand solar panels are a good source of producing electricity. A good source. But not a great source yet. Humans have to get better at the efficiency of the transfer of energy. Nikola Tesla may have been onto something in his research, but during his time, with the rise of Thomas Edison, Tesla was pushed aside. And that leads me to, we haven't done a who question yet. We could totally do who was Nikola Tesla.
Or who was Rasputin.
Right. We talked about him. That's a crazy one, too. Those two people would be good who's to do down in Whoville. The idea of radiant energy is so cool. So we talked about what weighs more, light versus shadow. Determined light weighs just minuscule. Immeasurable to a regular person, light weighs just a little bit more. And, if you break down all the calculations. That's a radiant energy that can be harnessed to transfer it into a different energy, into solar panels. All that heat, all those light photons turn on pressure and heat and all that. Waves of energy. That's what the microwaves are.
I mean, we learned about this kind of recently in science, but we learned about the different types of heat, and we learn about radiation heat.
Yeah, radiant heat. Kind of like our glass top stove.
Yeah.
It heats the coils. Electric comes in, heats the coils, and it heats the top, and that energy is transferred to boiling water or whatever we're cooking.
Yeah.
And then it leads to delicious food, usually.
Or it leads to another type of heat transfer, which is convection.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah. That's cold bottom, heat top.
Yep.
Like the saying, heat rises.
Mm-hmm.
So it literally does.
You ever watched a lava lamp? I know you're kind of young. I know I had lava lamps when I was a kid. So the heat of the wax, the material in the lava lamp, heats up in the bottom, and then goes to the top, floats there until it cools off, and then comes back down to heat up again. It's convection, like you said. I think it's a pretty good example of radiant energy. The heat's radiating into the material and then going up. And then that heat is radiating off. So you put your hand on it, it's hot.
Yeah.
So that's the wireless energy. That's radiant energy. And supposedly the Tartarian Empire was able to harness it in a much more efficient way than simply solar panels. They were harnessing, supposedly, allegedly, harnessing just plain radiant energy, wireless energy. Like everything produces some sort of energy. Everything produces some sort of wave you can pull out of whatever. But the issue is the efficiency of transferring that energy to something useful. Like you can't just hold up an antenna or whatever and start powering your phone. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
You're going to have to put up like a wind turbine. So you got a little mini wind turbine in the middle of a storm, and it's just spinning like crazy. You're turning that wind energy into the turbine, and it's turning that into energy. But it's not 100% transferable energy. There's no machine no man-made machine that is 100% transferable energy. It loses it someplace, amongst the pulleys, amongst the gears of whatever device that you have together. Cars are not efficient at all for the transfer of energy.
Yeah.
But that's the wireless energy of the Tartarian Empire. Supposedly they had this incredible technology that could do it. Beyond wireless energy, proponents also suggest the existence of other sophisticated technologies, including advanced forms of transportation, potentially referencing airships or some interpretations, and advanced energy storage methods, with some advocates attributing special properties to red bricks as a form of energy storage. That's interesting, like red bricks as a battery.
But why specifically red bricks?
Right, there should be something. There must be something to that. The red brick.
Maybe it's what makes them red.
What makes them red, or are they actually just bricks that we know, like some sort of clay or stone that's turned into a block? Or is it some sort of Tartarian proprietary technology we are unaware of? The attribution of such advanced technological capabilities serves a specific purpose within the conspiracy theory: to provide an explanation for the construction of the large and intricate buildings and structures that advocates believe were beyond the capacity of the populations to whom conventional history ascribes them. By postulating the existence of lost technology, theory circumvents the need for concrete evidence or plausible scientific mechanisms for these purported advancements, instead relying on a general notion of a more enlightened past.
The architectural claims of the Tartarian Empire theory are particularly prominent, with advocates pointing to numerous examples of buildings and structures around the world as evidence of this lost civilization's global reach and advanced capabilities. Luxuriously styled buildings dating from the Gilded Age, roughly the late 19th and early 20th centuries, are frequently highlighted as prime examples of Tartarian architecture. Proponents often express disbelief that these ornate and large structures could have been built using the technology and labor practices of the time, particularly without modern power tools.
The idea behind that is these crazy, mega intricate architectural phenomenons that are from the past is like, how could someone build that without a crane, without some sort of electrical, diesel, or whatever power thing picking up these mega weights? People literally had nothing else to do. There was no internet. There was only so many jobs. So they focused on that thing. And that's the job for many people.
Like building temples up
Right.
on mountains for gods.
Right. So it was either actual slave work or borderline slave work. But all these people wanted to work. There was literally nothing else to do. There wasn't, for some of them, there wasn't like newspapers or anything like that. You couldn't read anything. I mean, I'm sure there was things to read for fun, but there was just a lot of things that needed to be done certain times of year. Like the farming had to be done in certain ways.
I mean, people couldn't read until at least cuneiform was invented.
Right.
There was no other form of writing. And it was the first form of writing in ancient Mesopotamia.
And that's how you communicated with others.
Yeah. And being a scribe was a very hard job because no one else really knew how to write.
Right, so that those people were focused on that job, but there were many, many other laborers who were simply muscle to put big things together because that emperor guy wanted some bigger thing.
Yeah, like they wanted a statue of themselves, so get to chiseling.
Right. And that's speaking on more of the ancient things, but even the more modern, before steam-powered engines or whatever powered engines, there's still incredible architectural buildings and phenomenons out there that people carved out of stone or built brick by brick by brick by hand.
And even people today will like make statues or like
Right.
Like people will make statues of things.
And there's only so many people that do that.
Yeah.
In this day and age, there's so many like just plain artists.
Yeah.
That's their thing. It's like unfortunate, but I mean, there's billions of different kinds of jobs for people to do. Like glass blowing is a job somebody does. It's incredible. It's art. It's not a narrative. It's not a laborious work. It's not. I mean, it is a laborious work, but it's art for art's sake. It's not building up somebody else's, a CEO of a company. You're not working directly for them or a client. Maybe for a client, but like one client. Just a guy who wants painting, or just a guy who wants a glass pumpkin.
Or maybe you just make a mural to make a mural.
Right, just to do it.
Because you feel like it.
Right. Then people buy it.
Yeah.
Art for art's sake.
Yeah.
All right. Beyond Gilded Age architecture, the theory also encompasses other types of structures, including Capitol buildings featuring prominent domes, distinctive star-shaped fortifications found across the globe, and even iconic ancient structures like the Great Pyramids of Egypt and the White House in the United States. Advocates argue that the perceived similarities in architectural styles found across different continents are indicative of a shared origin within the Tartarian Empire. Furthermore, temporary structures erected for 19th and early 20th century World's Fairs are often interpreted as remnants of former Tartarian capital cities. which were supposedly repurposed to disseminate a falsified version of history. The subsequent demolition of these temporary fair structures is then viewed as part of a broader effort to conceal the existence of Tartaria. The selection of these specific architectural examples and styles appears to be rooted in their perceived grandeur and complexity, leading advocates to conclude that their construction must have required a more advanced civilization than is acknowledged by mainstream history.
A pivotal element to the Tartarian Empire narrative is the mud flood theory. This theory posits a global cataclysm supposedly occurring in the 1800s that resulted in a massive
inundation
of mud, which either destroyed or buried many Tartarian cities and structures. Proponents often point to architectural features such as doors, windows, and archways that appear to be submerged below the current ground level as visual evidence of this mudflood event. Some advocates even suggest a time frame for this event, placing it approximately 200 years ago. In addition to the mud flood, some proponents also cite the two world wars of the 20th century as events that further contributed to the destruction and concealment of evidence related to the Tartarian Empire, aligning with the reality that extensive bombing campaigns during World War II did indeed destroy many historical buildings. The mudflood theory serves as a central explanatory mechanism within the broader conspiracy, accounting for the perceived lack of direct historical records and the unusual architectural features that advocates interpret as anomalies.
So there's a lot of moving parts, and to get that to jive with everything. So the mud flood, old architectural buildings, they think the mud just covered up the lower parts of buildings, but a lot of times that's in that period of time is when more basements were being made. So basements were being built for ventilation. You put a little window in that's just above the ground level. But the archways is a different story. There definitely are some buildings that were built on top of other buildings. There's one that I've seen that most of the facade of the building is exposed, but there's a lower section that's super old stone, and then there's another section that's less old, so slightly newer stone, and then another section that is closer to more modern type wall work, and then the uppermost one is as close to modern as we're going to get for that kind of building. They just built, it was a good place to build a building, so they just kept building on top of that spot. And I can't see that really positive evidence that it was a former empire, a former hidden structure that they were just like, you know what? I don't really want anybody to see this. Let's just build over it. But as for the destruction in the two world wars to hide the Tartarian Empire, there's so many moving parts for that to be true. Yes, old structures got destroyed during those world wars, but there's way too much evidence to say that the wars were for something completely different than just to be like, all right, look, check it out. Why don't you send hundreds of dudes over to Europe to just destroy stuff? What?
That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't really compute in my brain. Just a wrecking crew. But some of those guys didn't come back because they died. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So you send a bunch of guys over as a wrecking crew, but then a bunch of them don't come back. But it was just a demolition job, so why did we lose a bunch of... It seems like such a weird way to try to convince people of a Tartarian Empire. I don't quite get it. Underpinning the entire Tartarian Empire narrative is the belief in a deliberate and systematic conspiracy to erase this advanced civilization from the annals of history. Proponents claim that powerful, often unspecified entities have actively suppressed the truth by rewriting historical accounts. What we're talking about. The winners write the history. Hiding or altering historical records, and even demolishing surviving Tartarian structures. The alleged motive for this historical revisionism is often vague, but implies a desire by subsequent powers to control the narrative of human history and perhaps conceal the superior achievements of Tartarians. Why? The claim that late 19th and early 20th century world's fairs were used to propagate a falsified history, with the subsequent dismantling of their elaborate structures serving as further evidence of the cover-up, reinforces this conspiratorial view. This element of conspiracy is crucial for the theory's survival, as it provides a framework for dismissing any contradictory evidence or the absence of expected historical support as being part of the ongoing suppression of the, quote, truth. What? I don't. I love the idea of it, but I can't get behind it. It's a narrative, it's a cool story, but I can't get behind it. I don't think there was a Tartarian Empire.
I also am not thinking there was one.
Go ahead. Look at us taking our tissue breaks, and we're gonna keep going.
To understand the claims of Tartarian Empire advocates, it is essential to examine the historical context of the term
Tartary.
Tartary itself. Tartary was a geographical term employed in Western European literature and cartography from the 13th through the 19th centuries to denote a vast expanse of Asia, primarily encompassing Central Asia and Siberia, and sometimes extending its reach to include
Manchuria.
The period of its active use spans several centuries. That's the time. Reflecting Europe's evolving, albeit often limited, understanding of this immense region. European knowledge of Tartary remained largely superficial and fragmented until the 19th century. In fact, the entire area was often simply referred to as Tartary, and its inhabitants were collectively known as Tartars. As European geographical understanding grew, Tartary was often subdivided on maps into regions such as
Muscovite
Tartary, Chinese Tartary, and Independent Tartary. I have a feeling I know what that is.
Independent Tartary?
America?
No.
Oh.
It's all talking about stuff in Eastern Europe as we know it, and the entirety of Asia. Like the Russian, the whole China area.
What would be independent?
Just a chunk of area where they're like, nah, dude, look, wasn't like somebody came from the area and went to the Western European cartographers, the map makers, and were like, no, look, these guys aren't Chinese. They're not Muscovites. They're something else. Like they're just people over there, but they're not part of the Chinese group, and they're not part of the Muscovite group. They're not part of any other group. They're just like by themselves. They're the independent Tartarians. And the Western European cartographers are like, okay, independent Tartary. That's how I understand it.
Reflecting either of the ruling power in those areas or a perceived level of autonomy.
There you go. See? So right there, that's, allegedly, and this is what the history books want us to know, that the Western European cartographers were just like, I don't know what's over there. You guys know what's over there? And they're like, well, it's Tartary, but, the Muscovites are over there, and the Chinese are over there, and These cartographers just making maps without actually exploring or actually getting evidence of what's over there.
Yeah.
The term Tartar itself, Tartar, has etymological roots in the historical Tatars, Tatars, and its usage in Europe was heavily influenced by the widespread devastation and fear associated with the Mongol Empire's expansion across Asia. Another thing we could possibly get into, Genghis or Genghis Khan. The addition of an extra R, resulting in Tartary, even carry connotations of Tartarus, the underworld in Greek mythology, suggesting a perception of the region and its inhabitants as somehow barbaric or hellish. Did you get into Tartarus in your Greek myth stuff? Or is it just called Hades?
We just got into Hades, which was the god of the underworld.
Right. And the underworld was called Tartarus. And so they gave that negative connotations, like they're just a bunch of barbarians over there, so it's Tartarus. As European exploration and geographical knowledge of Central Asia and Siberia increased, particularly through the voyages of explorers and the accounts of missionaries, the use of the term Tartary gradually declined, being replaced by more accurate and specific geographical designations like Central Asia, Siberia, and Manchuria. However, the term did persist in some contexts well into the 19th century. Therefore, the historical usage of Tartary was primarily as a broad geographical label for a largely unknown and diverse region, encompassing various cultures, ethnicities, and political entities, rather than denoting a single, unified, technologically advanced empire.
Notably, even the Russian...
Whoa. It is crucial.
What? Where?
Anywhere. Asia.
Oh, you stopped in the middle.
In the middle of what?
What?
What are you looking at over here? This is crazy. Notably, it is crucial. I'm in the middle of it. Where do you see it as crucial? Right
there. It's on a separate page for you. That's why it looks different.
That's weird. All right, I'll keep going fine. It is crucial to distinguish this historical understanding of Tartary from the Tartarian Empire conspiracy theory. The historical term referred to a diverse region with a multitude of different civil governments and ethnic groups, including nomadic populations whose way of life was centered on animal husbandry. This is a stark contrast to the conspiracy theory's portrayal of a single, lost civilization possessing advanced technology and a global reach. The Tartarian Empire theory fundamentally disregards the well-documented history of Asia, which the term Tartary historically encompassed, including the complex interactions and conflicts between various groups within the region and with neighboring empires. Literally, Europeans had no idea what was going on over there, but the people that were over there were recording history. They were recording their own history. So without exploring, without getting actual evidence, there was too many assumptions made that this was just some sort of barbaric area that nobody's exploring for real. But in reality, there were peoples over there of all different kinds recording history and having their own issues with each other over there. This is how it is. All right, notably, go on.
Notably, even the Russian Geographical Society, based in a country where some aspects of the theory originated, has debunked the Tartarian Empire conspiracy as an extremist fantasy. While acknowledging and even sharing historical maps of Tartary from its collections, the Society clarifies that these maps reflect historical geographical terminology, not evidence of a suppressed advanced civilization. Thus, the Tartarian Empire conspiracy theory appears to stem from a significant misinterpretation of historical cartography and a lack of understanding of the actual historical usage and connotations of the term Tartary.
Mm-hmm.
Examining the architectural claims of the Tartarian Empire theory requires a comparison with the documented history of the buildings and styles in question. The sumptuously styled buildings, often cited as evidence of Tartarian architecture, are primarily representative of the Gilded Age in the United States, a period of rapid industrialization and immense wealth accumulation that spanned roughly from the 1870s to 1900. The architectural styles prevalent during this era, such as Beaux Arts, Renaissance Revival, Romanesque Revival, and Queen Anne, were often eclectic, drawing inspiration from European palaces and historical architectural precedents. These styles reflected the aspirations of the newly wealthy American elite to emulate the grandeur of sophistication of European aristocracy.
So the architecture of the time, late 1800s to 1900, that's very specific, but I think it should be 1900s. It was just the idea of now America's getting wealthy, and there are elites in America at this time. They're like, you know what we could do? Now we could look like Europe. And they got to work. Numerous such buildings have well-documented construction histories, often involving prominent architects like Richard Morris Hunt and Stanford White. Detailed timelines recorded in contemporary sources and clear identification of the wealthy individuals or institutions that commissioned them. For instance, the Queen Victoria Building in Sydney, Australia, opened in 1898 and replaced the original Sydney Markets, with its architect, George McRae, submitting designs in Gothic, Queen Anne, Renaissance, and Romanesque styles, none of which were Tartarian. Similarly, Melbourne's Melbourne? I'll call it Melbourne.
I think it's Melbourne.
Melbourne? I think they pronounce it way different in Australia. Similarly, Melbourne's Shrine of Remembrance was constructed between World War I and II. The incredulity. Yeah. I know how to pronounce this. Incredulity expressed by some advocates regarding the construction of these buildings without modern power tools overlooks the significant advancements in 19th century construction, including a large skilled workforce and the increasing use of steam-powered machinery and new materials like steel and cast iron. Now that is the same idea of this whole ancient aliens thing. So now it's kind of poo-pooing on the abilities of these ancient, not in this case, but these old laborers, these old architects, old engineers to build these things. Like, now they're saying it wasn't the work of that contemporary people to do this thing. It was some advanced race, some advanced empire, or even aliens that built all these things. It wasn't just people. It wasn't just humans. That's not... You're kind of poo-pooing on the fact that these people worked their butts off to build these incredible things.
Yeah, I mean, they did this for a living. They did this just about every day of their life.
Right.
Like, kids would start working in, like, farms young.
You want to work in a mine? Why? There's canaries.
I'm not trying to get sick.
Sick enough.
I know that little boys back in the 1900s would get sick from working in the mines all day. They would get sick and die.
Yeah, they got canaries.
I don't care. I don't want to work in the mines.
All right, go ahead.
The presence of domes on Capitol buildings around the world, often cited as another example of Tartarian influence, reflects a long-standing architectural tradition. The U.S. Capitol building's dome, for example, was constructed between 1856 and 1866, replacing an earlier structure. This evolution in dome design from earlier wooden constructions to later cast iron structures was driven by factors such as the need for larger, more aesthetically pleasing, and fire-resistant domes to suit the expanding size and symbolic importance to of these government buildings. The design of many Capitol building domes was directly influenced by classical European precedents, underscoring the neoclassical architectural style favored for such structures. This historical context demonstrates that the prevalence of domes on Capitol buildings is a result of shared architectural trends and symbolic associations with power and governance, rather than evidence of a unified Tartarian Empire.
So it wasn't necessarily stealing ideas of somebody else. They were just like, man, that looks cool. I want to do that too.
Yeah, it's just like,
man, that's super effective. We should do this too. And that's how we get into star forts. Star forts, with their distinctive geometric shapes, are also frequently highlighted by Tartarian advocates. However, these fortifications have a well-documented history originating in the mid-15th century in Italy in response to the development of more effective gunpowder artillery. Their design, featuring low, thick walls and projecting bastions, was specifically intended to counter cannon fire and eliminate blind spots for defenders. Star forts became a standard in military architecture across Europe and its colonies for several centuries. This clear historical and military context directly contradicts the notion that star forts were built by a lost, advanced civilization for unknown purposes.
The structure of Fort Wood on Liberty Island in New York City, United States, was used for the foundation of the Statue of Liberty. Nearly, but not quite every country in the world has some kind of star fort or bastion fort. It was a good design that people built for fortifications. It's no wonder Tartarian advocates see them as a tie to a global empire. Just search list of bastion forts and you'll find tons of them.
They're all over the place because I did that. Like, I wanted a few examples of these star forts, these bastion forts. And Wikipedia has a practical endless list of them in almost every country in the world. I mean, there's a bunch of countries, but the United States has tons of them alone. Italy has a massive list of them alone. They're everywhere. So that looks like a singular empire. They're not all exactly star forts or, a perfectly symmetrical star. They have these points out of various positions so that they are better fortified. It's a really cool design, and it's a very effective design. So to think the singular empire would build all of them, I guess, but there's so many different designs of them. They're various pointy shapes.
Yeah, you got that right.
Not just stars, but they're all over the place.
Yeah, there's some with like squares that like pointed out.
Right. So cool design.
Yeah.
And effective design, so then it's used everywhere.
Yeah.
Finally, the elaborate structures erected for World's Fairs, such as the Palace of Fine Arts at the 1915 San Francisco Fair, were almost universally designed as temporary constructions, often built using relatively lightweight materials like plaster over frameworks. Their purpose was to showcase innovations and cultural achievements during the fair, and they were typically demolished afterwards. The Beaux Arts style often employed in these structures was characteristic of the era. This historical understanding directly refutes the claim that these were permanent Tartarian structures intentionally destroyed as part of a cover-up.
The technological claims associated with the Tartarian Empire, particularly the assertion of unlimited wireless energy, must be evaluated against the history of wireless power development. While Nikola Tesla made significant strides in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, demonstrating the short-range wireless power transmission and envisioning a global wireless system. His ambitious plans faced substantial financial and technological limitations and were never fully realized. The concept of unlimited wireless energy being a readily available technology in a pre-19th century civilization, as implied by the Tartarian Empire theory, lacks any supporting evidence and contradicts the documented challenges and gradual progress in the field of wireless power.
Just wasn't there to do it. Yes, there is what they call Baghdad battery, but that was very minor chemical processes to produce a short jolt. So, like in a potato, you can put a couple of wires in a potato and it will light a light for a little bit. It's cool process. And there was something like it, centuries ago. But it doesn't mean there was a major empire on the whole globe that had massive technology like that centuries ago. Similarly, the implication that the construction of large and ornate buildings in the 19th century was impossible without a lost, more advanced civilization overlooks the significant advancements in construction materials and techniques during that era. The 19th century witnessed a revolution in building with the increasing availability of machine-cut lumber, mass-produced bricks, and crucially, steel and cast iron, alongside the application of steam power to various construction processes. While these were complex undertakings requiring skilled labor, they were entirely within the capabilities of the technology and engineering knowledge of the time, as evidenced by the multitude of surviving structures and detailed historical records. Which that's one thing that different conspiracy theories talk about. We have advanced technology so crazy in 100 years. It's so unbelievable. Like, first flight was early 1900s. We went to space about 50 years later. That seems crazy.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about going further in space. We haven't got there yet, which also blows my mind. But now the capitalism is too entrenched to just be like, look, listen, tough. We got all the stuff. We're going to Mars. But everybody wants a piece of the pie. They want to be paid for it, by it somehow. Which is unfortunate for advancement. Because 50 years ago, we went to the moon. Haven't been back to the moon since. All right. You want to read the next part?
Sure. A critical examination of the Tartarian Empire narrative reveals a fundamental lack of credible evidence. There is no historical, archaeological, anthropological, or geological support for the existence of a global, technologically advanced empire that was systematically erased from history as described by proponents. The theory is riddled with logical inconsistencies and bizarre claims that have no factual basis. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. The central mudflood theory, purported to explain the empire's demise and the appearance of submerged architectural features, is not supported by any geological evidence of a global cataclysm in the 1800s. Instead, the architectural features cited as evidence can be readily explained by common urban development processes, the practice of building basements, the evolution of architectural styles, and the temporary nature of structures built for events like World's Fairs.
When I did the notes for that made me think of the temporary structures that they put in for the Olympics. And they don't always tear those down. There's some structures that are just there. And they're like rotting away, which is
there's
crazy.
One that is I've seen one like in videos before that's either in China or Japan.
Tokyo, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Tokyo.
It's just there.
And I think it's for like beach volleyball or something.
Oh, so they don't. Do they use it?
No, but it's just there.
But
There.
they didn't tear them
away.
down. For these ones, they tore them down. They were meant to be temporary. They were meant to be like, this is something we could do, but this is temporary, so we're not going to keep it.
Yeah, but some are just there. They were temporary use.
And they're left.
They were left behind to rot away. And be abandoned and creepy and scary.
Which is weird to me. Why don't you utilize it somehow? Why don't you make it have a purpose beyond the Olympics? Train for the Olympics at the place you had the Olympics. Crazy.
And just be a smart decision.
Logic. The Tartarian Empire conspiracy theory, while captivating to some, lacks any factual basis in established historical and scientific knowledge. The claims made by its advocates regarding a lost, globally advanced civilization, its technological prowess, and its sudden demise due to a mud flood are not supported by credible evidence. The architectural and technological anomalies cited as proof can be readily explained within the context of documented history, architectural trends, and 19th century advancements in construction and engineering. The historical term Tartary refers to a diverse geographical region, not a lost empire. The enduring appeal of this theory likely stems from a combination of factors, including a distrust of established narratives, a romanticized view of the past, and the allure of a hidden history. However, a thorough examination of the evidence reveals the Tartarian Empire to be a pseudo-historical construct that does not withstand scrutiny when compared with established historical and scientific understanding. And here's a short list of buildings claimed by Tartarian advocates.
We'll both get one. I get one, you get one.
There's like 5.
I mean, like, we
Great. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do first one. Queen Victoria Building, Sydney, Australia. Opened in 1898, replaced original Sydney markets. Architect George McRae submitted 4 designs: Gothic, Queen Anne, Renaissance, and Romanesque. None were Tartarian. Construction timeline well documented in newspapers and official records.
Shrine of Remembrance in Melbourne, Australia. Construction between World War I and II. Foundation stone laid in 1927, opened in 1934. Claims of earlier photos are debunked through reverse image searches showing later dates.
The White House, Washington, D.C., USA. Construction began in 1792. Architect James Hoban. Burned down by the British in 1814 and rebuilt. Its architectural style is neoclassical, influenced by European
Palladianism
and Irish country houses. Well-documented construction history.
U.S. Capitol Building Dome, Washington, D.C. First dome finished in 1824. Architect Charles Bulfinch. Replaced by the current cast iron dome between 1856 and 1866. Architect Thomas U. Walter. Influenced by European domes. Extensive documentation of design, construction, and materials.
Palace of Fine Arts, 1915 San Francisco Fair. Built as a temporary structure for the Panama Pacific International Exposition. While most fair buildings were demolished, public appreciation led to its preservation. Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Later reconstruction in more permanent materials. Its Beaux Arts style was typical of the fair's architecture.
Gilded Age mansions, e.g. Vanderbilt mansions. Built by wealthy industrialists and financiers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Designed by prominent architects in various European-inspired styles, Beaux Arts, Renaissance Revival, etc. Construction dates, architects, and owners are well recorded.
This is another case of a well-thought-out narrative with plenty of people who defend the idea of it. But the lack of evidence specifically in favor of the Tartarian Empire and plenty of evidence contradicting the idea of it is just too strong. To me, the mud flood theory just doesn't make sense. The idea of covering up a formerly global empire just doesn't really make sense to me either. Why not learn from the past and use those ideas? If there is a hidden global society or empire, or whatever word you want to use, what purpose does it serve to cover up advanced technologies or something more simple, the ability or arguments to be able to work together as a global empire?
Yeah. Why don't we learn from what they did? How were they a global empire? Why divide everybody? If all these people were working together, why divide everybody?
Yeah.
I know everybody wants a piece of the pie. Everybody wants to get paid. Everybody wants a little slice of their own earth, but it was a global empire. How did they work together?
Yeah.
Or it wasn't a global empire. The idea is amazing. A whole global empire.
Yeah. It'll be a great story, but probably not an informational one.
Nope. The narrative, there's too many holes in the narrative. That's it. That's all we got for that one.
Yep.
Question brought.
Question answered.
I didn't prepare my button.
No.
A production of Wayward Things Network.